You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
Tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts. Do you think fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat?
These headlines here are not true. This is disinformation.
All right, let's get at it. We're going to be looking at NPR and self-loathing white people. And I also want to tap in just the idea and the notion that sexual preferences and body size is the exact same thing as ethnicity, which is crazy. But this is what happens when you have to have people and other groups to support your ethnic campaigns. And because the ethnic campaign, the civil rights movement needed other people, they kind of pulled those other groups into their gravitational pull. And now they're taking over the whole thing. Watch this. Let's go.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. Ha, how white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think that white people should pay reparations?
I've never said that, sir.
Yes, you did. You said it in January of 2020. You tweeted, yes, the North, yes, all of us, yes, America, yes, our original collective sin and unpaid debt, yes, reparations, yes, on this day.
I don't believe that was a reference to fiscal reparations, sir.
What kind of reparations was it a reference to?
I think it was just a reference to the idea that we all owe much to the people who came before us.
That's a bizarre way to frame what you tweeted. Do you believe that looting is morally wrong?
I believe that looting is illegal, and I refer to it as counterproductive. I think it should be prosecuted.
Do you believe it's morally wrong, though?
Of course.
Of course. Then why did you refer to it as counterproductive? It's a very different way to describe it.
It is both morally wrong and counterproductive, as well as being illegal.
You tweeted, it's hard to be mad about protests in reference to the BLM protests, not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression. You didn't condemn the looting. You said that it was counterproductive. NPR also promoted a book called In Defense of Looting. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
In Defense of Looting?
I'm unfamiliar with that book, sir, and I don't believe that was at my time at NPR.
You tweeted that you read that book, but...
Oh, my gosh.
I don't believe that I did read that book, sir.
Do you think that a few years ago, NPR educated America about, quote, the whole community of genderqueer dinosaur enthusiasts? Do you think that that's an appropriate use of tax dollars?
I was not at NPR at the time, sir.
That's not the question, though. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of our tax dollars?
I think our tax dollars that we use are to be able to provide a wide range of perspectives.
I'll take that as a yes. You do believe that that's appropriate. Your health advisor at NPR also stated in an interview that, quote, fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat. Would you like to explain how fear of fatness is more harmful than actual fat? That's an editorial at NPR.
I am not familiar with the editorial, and I don't believe that was published during my time here.
It's called Diet Culture is Everywhere. Here's how to fight it. Do you think that that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
I think any reporting on health is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars, yes.
And you think that editorializing that fat is not unhealthy is appropriate?
I don't know what that article is, sir, and I'm not familiar with it, so I couldn't say.
This is fake news. Do you think that basic accommodations like doorways or seat belts represent, quote, latent fat phobia?
I don't have an opinion.
It's also from NPR. Do you think civility is racist?
No, sir.
No. Your outlet ran an article entitled, quote, when civility is used as a cudgel against people of color. That was on All Things Considered. This is garbage.
Well, one of the problems is, and I'm glad this gentleman is really laying out on the table all of the views of NPR, because really what it is that soft, easygoing bigotry of low expectations. You don't believe that Black people can be civil. You don't believe that somebody can take care of themselves if you hold them accountable for their size and their weight. You don't believe that. So therefore you shift the goalposts and you change rules, you change standards, all those kind of things, because ultimately at the end of the day, you don't believe that they can actually do any better. And you're actually lowering the standard in order to make them feel better and you to lord over them. This is wild. Great call out though, sir.
I'll spend all of my time doing everything I can to ensure you guys never get another dollar of taxpayer funding.
What you do at NPR, is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
In the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that
Was award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased.
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
How about this story? October 2020, the New York Post had the Hunter Biden laptop story, and one of those editors, I guess one of those 87 Democrat editors, said this: we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. We don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' times on stories that are just pure distractions. Was that a pure distraction story?
Our current editorial leadership believes that that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake. Definitely impacted the election, or I think it certainly impacted the election. How about the COVID origin story? That's a pretty big story too, right? Mr. Berliner said, we became fervent members of the team Natural Origin, even declaring that the lab leak was debunked by scientists. Turns out, though, the lab leak is what most people think actually caused the COVID virus.
Sorry, is there a question there?
There is. You guys were 0 for 3 on the three of the biggest stories in the last 5 years. You guys were 0 for 3, and yet you maintain that NPR is not biased?
Congressman, I do not believe we are politically biased. No, we are a nonpartisan organization.
Nonpartisan organization. What's happening to your listeners over the last 5 years? Went up, down, or stayed the same?
It has gone up and down and is now going back up.
Well, I thought 5 years ago it was at 60 million. And you said in your opening statement, I think 43 million.
That's correct.
So 43 million now, and it was at 60 million 5 years ago. I can do some math. That looks like it went down.
And is now going back up.
It's now going back up?
Yes, it is.
How much has it went back up?
It's gone up a couple of millions over the past years.
So you went from 60 million to 41 million. Now you're back up to 43 million.
In a year's time, I'm very proud of that growth, sir.
Okay, you're proud of that growth. Okay. But over 5 years, this went down 18 million.
That is correct, sir.
Wow.
Okay. Should taxpayers subsidize NPR?
I believe that taxpayers subsidize local stations, sir. That is the vast majority of what
I thought you said you got 11 million from Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which is taxpayer funded directly to you, right?
That is to support the public
and
radio
then local
stations
get it from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, right? They get taxpayer
100
money.
million that goes to the local
100 million goes to
yes.
local stations, and then those local stations buy back programming and content from you. So that money goes to the local stations, comes back to you, gets routed through the local stations, all taxpayer money.
Those fees are actually based on private donations rather than on federal funding.
Well, we all know money's fungible, so some of it gets put in there.
Certainly, we could agree that money is fungible.
What? More money for less listeners. You fired the guy who pointed all this out, who said that you were so biased to the left that you lost listeners, which is exactly happening, and you're here maintaining that, you need to continue to get taxpayer money. Are you fundraising off today's hearing?
Sir, I believe that there was a message that went out earlier today letting people know we were coming in. Yes.
Yeah, and at the bottom of the message it said, donate now, right?
I don't recall the exact
I
language.
can show it to you. Right there it is. Donate now. I mean, I'm not against fundraising. We all do it. I mean, I get it. But it's I assume this fundraising thing is probably going to all the left listeners who are subsidized content by the taxpayers, and that's the
gentleman's
rub.
time is expired.
That's the rub.
Do you remember the story that NPR wrote about me saying I had a shell company?
Congressman, I was not at NPR at the time, and I'm unfamiliar with the story.
Where do you get your sources on something like that? That's a very serious accusation, because we're investigating a president and his family who had 28 shell companies. I have a problem with that because you get federal funds. And I do believe there was a role for public radio 30 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. But because of technology today, I don't think there's a role for public radio anymore. And I think you've abused the privilege that you had with receiving federal funds. Because these headlines here are not true. This is disinformation on some huge topics.
How did somebody not pull a fire alarm or call 911? Because I've never seen such a blowout on Capitol Hill like that before. I mean, it was just generally hilarious, Sean, to hear Catherine Mayer say her past statements and social media posts, some of which that were just read there during that montage, had no bearing whatsoever on NPR's editorial decisions. I mean, go listen to NPR for 3 minutes. Trust me, you'll have a decidedly different opinion. And if any of the folks from DOGE are watching this, and we're watching today, Elon, if you're looking for some waste that could be really easy to cut, look no further than, MS NPR or MS PBS. They stopped its tradition, 50-year tradition, of reading the Declaration of Independence on Independence Day. That's nice, right? Instead, they decided that having a discussion on how Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence were actually racist, they thought that was a better idea. I mean, Mayer alone, she called President Trump a racist, a sociopath during the 2020 election, all while sporting a Biden for president hat. It's on social media. You could go see it. So at this point, if she keeps this up, if the CEO of PBS keeps this up, they'll both be co-hosting The View by next week. And the big question here at the end, why should even one American taxpayer dollar be given to PBS or NPR? Because according to Pew Research, the audiences at NPR and PBS are among the most liberal in America. Nearly 3/4, for example, of NPR's and PBS's audience describe themselves as consistently liberal. Almost no conservatives watch.
Wow. And I just thought that was a good chance to kind of see some of the things that fell out from the DOGE examination. Of course, NPR, and whether or not it really truly needs to be funded by taxpayer dollars. What if it was out there in the free market, had to claw and scrape, just like every other outlet and media platform had to do at one time or another? What if it wasn't funded by the government and it would have to actually compete? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I really do appreciate you all. Thank you so much. If you stayed all the way to the end, go ahead and hit that green heart. Let me know that you stayed. And definitely thank you so much for liking the video, as well as for subscribing. It helps us hit our goal of 50,000 subscribers, which is definitely on the horizon. I'm looking forward to celebrating with you all real soon. So until then, grace and peace.